So good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for joining us for today's Meet the Expert session. My name is Ash. I'm part of the My World of Work Live team with Skills Development Scotland. We're all about helping you to understand skills, why they're important, and how they can help you find an amazing job here in Scotland. So in today's session, we're going to cover a quick overview of the manufacturing sector, a look at the opportunities within the sector, and you're going to get to meet today's experts, Ekaterina and Mark O'Hare from the National Manufacturing Institute Scotland and Advanced Forming Research Centre. But the main part of today's session will be giving you all the opportunity to ask our experts any questions. So for the Q&A section, you can use the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen to ask as many questions as you want as we go through the session. We'll try and answer as many of these questions as we possibly can. If you're maybe not as comfortable using your name to ask questions, don't worry. Everything you ask today can be anonymous. All you need to do is select the option on the Q&A box. Just before we get started, today's session is being recorded, so that means that young people that couldn't make it today can still access the resources, and it means that everyone watching here just now can go back and watch anything that they might have missed. It will be available for everyone to watch on the My World of Work YouTube channel. So I know you'll all be keen to hear from our experts, but let's have a quick look at the manufacturing sector to begin with. So the manufacturing sector is vast and it spreads into many different industries like aerospace and space, climate and energy, life and chemical sciences, construction, and so many more. It takes place in almost all regions of Scotland, with medical manufacturing taking place in the north and satellite manufacturing taking place in the central belt. There are currently just about 190,000 people employed in the manufacturing sector just now, with a goal to increase this by 2,500 roles a year. So without further ado, let me introduce you to today's experts. Today we've got Ekaterina and Mark from NMIS and AFRC. Would you guys mind giving us an idea of who you are, what you do, and how you got to where you are now? We're going to start with Ekaterina.
Hi Ash, hi everyone, very nice to meet you all. My name is Dr. Ekaterina and I am the SME Engagement Manager for the National Manufacturing Institute of Scotland. SMEs are small and medium enterprises. These are kind of like small companies in the economies. Yes, you're probably familiar with big names like Rolls-Royce and Boeing and so on. But most of our economy is actually comprised by these smaller and medium-sized companies. And these companies, in order to grow and to be successful, and for all of our economy to be successful, they need to introduce various improvements in innovations. And especially it's true of companies that are working in the area of manufacturing and engineering these days. And so my job is to help facilitate projects and support, with these companies, support to these companies that are kind of the fabric of our economy, life and blood and sort of salt of the earth of our economy. So my background is in physics and in sciences, and I have over the years, for approximately equal amount of years, worked in academia and industry. All the projects I've always worked on were very much focused on supporting something for industry. They're called applied projects, so I worked in electronics, in biomedical devices, food, quite heavy engineering as well over the years, so you name it. So I'm quite familiar with a lot of sectors and innovation in a lot of sectors. So I'm very grateful, because in my career I had a very strong foundation in the STEM subjects, and I would just be very happy today to tell you about, all of my experience in this area. Thank you.
Hi folks. Yeah, thank you. Thanks for that, Katia. Yeah, my name's Mark O'Hare. I work at the National Manufacturing Institute for Scotland as well, alongside the Katia. Yeah, I'm our Collaborative Research and Development Manager, which I fully agree is one of the most boring titles, but at the same time, I'm responsible for some of the sourcing and planning of the financial support that we can help companies with. How do we help companies find the money to do new research and make new products, etc. I've been with the centre for 8 years. I've come right through the ranks in the centre as well. I started right down at the bottom, kind of graduate, etc., with the idea coming in, and it's taken me 8 years to really find my home at what I'm doing in the centre, etc. I absolutely love my job. I'm 35. I like to consider myself a young engineer, but I'm not convinced that passes anymore. But basically, as I say, it took me till I was about 27 and I started working at the Advanced Form and Research Centre in NMIS to really find the fact that I liked the balance of academic research and kind of university learning that I'd worked in before, and the kind of heavy industry work that we do at the National Manufacturing Institute as well. I work in aerospace, I work in manufacturing, I work in automotive sectors, etc., that kind of thing. And like Katia as well, there's also backgrounds in likes of academic work, and also in biomedical engineering as well, like really kind of taking my engineering skills away from large-scale manufacturing and bring them into the likes of prosthetics and orthotics, and really helping people at a personal level as well. So it's really interesting the work we do across the centre. Our aim is to challenge the thoughts of engineering as this kind of old, dusty subject in a dark factory, bring it into a new and exciting, vibrant workplace. We deal with technologies such as robotics, augmented reality, etc., all that kind of things, and bring them to the subjects that you study and take them forward. We do that through the kind of work we do working with companies, with universities, but we also do it through the kind of STEM ambassador roles that quite a lot of our staff work on as well, and try and feed all that information back into the subjects that you study. So yeah, range of breadth of experience, and looking forward to answering some of the questions, etc., that you have today.
That's really brilliant. You've both got such amazing and interesting job roles to find out about today, and I really hope we get some really interesting questions coming in. We've got one just now for Ekaterina. So Ekaterina, what sort of jobs did you do before this?
Well, before this job, well, I've been with the Advanced Forming Research Centre, National Manufacturing Institute for Scotland, for 5 years now, and even within the centre, I have gone through a number of jobs. I was an SME support advisor when I started in the centre, and then I progressed to a business development role in a couple of technical teams, and I also worked in the research and development grant team, the team Mark is heading now. And I've also worked in the strategy team. So even just before this particular post, I have worked in a number of jobs in my current centre. Prior to starting at the FRC, I actually had a very, very interesting job because I was a managing director in my own startup company. So my startup didn't end up as wonderful as Facebook or something like that, you know, but I was able to finance and develop a product, you know, finance company for 3 years. And prior to that, I worked as a university researcher, and even before that, I worked as an R&D manager and team lead in an industrial setting in the company. And so behind me, actually, from the start of my PhD work, it's actually 30 years this year for me. So I've had many different jobs, but my very first job after my PhD was a job of a postdoctoral researcher in the university. And then it progressed, and yes, I've got a very long list. So cheers. I hope it gives you a bit of a feel for a long career.
You've got such a rich and interesting career history. Wow. So we've got another question coming in for Mark. You said augmented reality. How do you use this?
So we use augmented reality in a number of different ways. Typically, it's for likes of visualization and production capabilities. So if you can imagine systems where somebody's maybe built assembling something on a factory manufacturing line, etc., they could have an augmented reality visualization system that gives them their instructions, where to put things specifically, all of these kind of things. But we also do it for kind of breakdown analysis and these kind of things. So if we are looking at a new product, we're working with, or we work with some of the biggest companies in the world developing aerospace engines, the engines that sit on the edges of your planes, the engines that sit in your cars, etc. These kind of things. If we want to get into the depths of analysing those products, etc., rather than having to break down or manufacture prototypes or anything like that, we can actually visualise the entire models in front of us and kind of pick at the parts to take them apart and these kind of things, and understand how we could visualise the manufacturing process that goes with them and really take that forward. So a lot of our job is actually just problem solving, but these new technologies such as augmented reality are bringing solutions to those jobs with kind of a modern twist to them. It actually makes it really exciting to work with, and we're always learning on those roles as well.
Yeah, that's a really creative way to solve a problem. I'm going to ask the next question. I'm going to ask Ekaterina the next question. So, what is your favorite part of your job?
Sorry, that's the question to me, yes?
Yeah, what's your favorite part of your job? Sorry.
The volume was just slightly lower there. I like many aspects of my job, but I think probably the most interesting one is actually working with people. And the people aspect is probably the most interesting, because it's critically important in the job I do is to have good communication with people, to understand their personalities, to understand how they communicate, what makes them tick, and respond to the discussions that we're having. So I think it's that sort of sociable people aspect of my job is probably the most exciting, and probably it's actually one of the most challenging aspects of my job as well. Thank you.
That's really, really interesting, Ekaterina. Thanks for that answer. So the next question I'm going to pose to Mark. What are the benefits of augmented reality?
Benefits, basically, we can reduce a lot of the costs, etc., and that kind of thing in manufacturing processes and in new technologies. So as we bring them to these processes, ultimately we're trying to make everything we manufacture cheaper, better, faster, etc. These kind of things. We know that across the varying, I'm looking at almost the kind of pandemic just now, with the idea we know that bike supply or that kind of thing is all struggling to meet the demand of supply chains across the world. It's similar things are happening in large scale manufacturing as well. We need to help these companies actually respond much faster. Can they make things faster? Can they make things much cheaper? How do we take that? And new technologies such as augmented reality really help us make sure that we're cutting the costs right down, and we're making the benefit of digital technologies as well. As I mentioned, we no longer need to create an entire prototype jet engine to see if it actually fits on the side of a plane, or we no longer need to create the individual parts that sit within the engine and then try and match up the assembly and see if it works together, etc. We can do this all digitally. We can all sit in a room. We actually don't even need to sit in a room. We've proven over the last kind of 12 months working with everyone that we can sit in separate your own living room, your own spare bedrooms, etc. These kind of things, and you can communicate and analyze all of these problems virtually, and you can all see the same thing as well. And augmented reality is a fantastic thing for that.
That's a really, really good point. It's good to get the sort of scale of what an object is, and even being able to go into like augmented reality and see the different individual parts. That's a really good answer, Mark. Thank you very much. So the next question I'm going to throw back to Ekaterina. It's great to hear more about roles that support advanced manufacturing. At the company, are there roles in marketing?
Oh, yes, of course. Yes, there are definitely roles in marketing. Marketing is a very important component on what we do. Marketing is all about, effective communication, and our offering is rather complex. We communicate the case studies, the pieces of research that we have done to, with various companies, so it's quite interesting to do market on behalf of a research organization. Because it's very information intensive. You have to learn a lot about technologies, you get to know about technologies, but on the other hand, if you have very good marketing skill, that kind of very nicely marries up, and we can communicate through various popular engineering journals, events, webinars, conferences, and so on. So there's definitely room for marketing in organizations such as ours, yes.
That's a really important point. Manufacturing is just as much about communicating with the general public and partners as it is actually making the objects. Thanks very much, Ekaterina. I've got a question for both of you. So to give Ekaterina a wee break, I'm going to throw this one back to Mark. What does a typical day look like for you?
At the moment, lots of phone calls, but a typical day it keeps us quite busy. I spend a lot of my time jumping between subjects, so I will maybe get pulled into a planning session with Kathy and her team on some of the SME work. I might be speaking to funding bodies, etc., about raising funds for particular important subjects across the UK. So, for example, we might have companies that are really interested in development of renewable energy or the manufacture of wind turbines, etc., that kind of thing. How can we help them source funding across the UK? Equally, quite a lot of my work is actually just problem solving. So working with the teams along the lines of, well, how are you going to do that? Let's create the plan. Where are you going to? What trials do you need to run? What prototypes you need to develop, etc., that kind of thing, and where could we bring in new technologies? All right, we need to source more funding for those new technologies. Right, let's go and do that. It keeps us really busy. So I do a lot of planning and a lot of development with funding bodies, etc.
That's a really good answer. Thanks very much, Mark. So throwing that question back to Ekaterina, what does a typical day look like for you?
My days are actually very similar to what Mark has described. Very similar pattern. Huge variety of activities, huge variety of levels of what we call stakeholders. The people who are involved in our kind of innovation community. I can be speaking one day to someone in a workshop, literally about nuts and bolts of a situation, and I can also be talking on the same day to people, for example, in the high value manufacturing catapult, people who determine the kind of strategy of support for manufacturing at the highest level, basically. I mean, just one level below the government level, so to speak, So the variety of conversations that I have in a day is absolutely huge. An important part of my work also is basically presenting information in the form of various documents, So I try to allocate some time in my day, which is very difficult, to some peaceful kind of like moments when I write certain documents. We write various reports, strategic plans. So there's quite a lot of communication that happens in writing. And of course, it's like in and out of Zooms, these days, Zooms and Teams, because a lot of communication is by virtual means these days. But the variety of what we do in a given day is absolutely immense. So, you have to be wearing, as they call them, different hats, So you're wearing a hat of one kind of in one role and another hat in another role, and you have to change hats a lot at this level. So that's my day.
It sounds like problem solving and communication are just really integral to working in manufacturing at various different roles and levels. So that it's really good to hear that from both of you. So again, to give you a wee break, let's throw this back over to Mark. So Mark, what skills do you use in your role?
Yeah, it's quite. I was very conscious after the both of our last answers that it sounds like we do a lot of paperwork. We do a lot of paperwork, but equally, we have skills that go right across the variations in the centre. A lot of my role earlier in my career at the AFRC was looking at around organising full-scale manufacturing trials, etc., in our workshops, in our labs, dealing with hands-on equipment, etc. So we have large-scale like forging presses, 2,000-ton forging presses, robotics, etc., where we're responsible for doing all the programming, doing the data analysis, these kind of things. So it is that little kind of bit of, as Katia says, a little bit of problem solving that we do work with. But now that the levels on a day-to-day that I'm working at, it's more at the higher level, planning all of that out, working with the teams to ensure that they're all coordinated to make sure that happens. And I think a real strength that probably both of us bring to the centre is the understanding of all of that workshop technology and all of those workshop skills that you need to know, which is, it boils right down to even like health and safety. Are you doing your trials safely, etc., that kind of thing? You need to plan for all that as well, and that's the nature of the work that we don't do on a day-to-day basis. So there's a lot of planning, a lot of coordination, and as Katia says, one of the key skills is communication. Make sure that everyone knows what's happening and everyone's working together.
Yeah, it sounds like communication is just such a core to this sort of job, and I think that's a really important message to make sure today's viewers actually get to see that. So I'm going to pass this next question back over to Ekaterina. Do you have a favourite project you've worked on? Why did you enjoy it?
Good question. I have many favorite projects actually. Of course, as I mentioned, I've had a long career. In industry, I think one of my favorite projects was working on an advanced clinical analytical technology. It was really an extremely advanced and winning project, and it was actually on a technology that has huge relevance today. For example, during COVID, it was about analytical clinical kind of approaches, and that's very important and very, very pertinent. And it's the technologies that help to detect illness, in progress or in advance. Very, very important kind of humanitarian component to this. And my most interesting recent project is in the field of renewables, and it's to do with the generation of energy from hydro sources from small rivers. And this is also very, very interesting because this is undervalued source of renewable energy. But I'm very privileged to work with very exciting new company in this space, and so that's exciting. These projects where from the intellect and from the ideas of their originators, something really, really important comes. It's like people are really, real creators, making something out of nothing. And I think the renewable energies and probably sort of energy from renewable sources, and also subjects like clinical analytics actually will be very much in the forefront of developments in the nearest future.
That's amazing. It's really interesting to hear just how on the cutting edge of science and technology developments you guys are. And I think, yeah, that's probably going to be something that draws people into the space and the industry and makes them want to engage with it more. So I'm gonna actually pass that question back over to Mark as well. What is your favourite project that you've been involved in while at AFRC?
Yeah, we have a large variety of projects across my time that I've worked there, etc. One of my favourites, I think, I did a lot of work. I spent kind of 2.5, 3 years working with Jaguar Land Rover, developing one of their next gearboxes. So the team that we had here were looking at manufacturing processes of components within the gearbox, and we worked with the team at Jaguar to develop the actual full gearbox system as well. And I think it was great. It was really interesting working with such a UK-based company who were enthusiastic about their future technologies and enthusiastic about their processes. But it was also really interesting because a lot of the work that we do, we may be only looking at the one individual component. We're not looking at the system. We're not looking at the product. Jaguar really brought the whole package to this. So we were making one component, but we were integrated into the gearbox design, the development, these kind of things, which ultimately then ended up in a car. It ended up in underneath the Range Rover, the next generation Range Rover, and we're sitting in like some review meetings, etc. And the guys were pulling up pictures of literally the gearbox we had helped design in a car, and it was just like, I don't know, suddenly it was no longer a product at the end of a manufacturing line. It was literally a product that could sit on the street, and that was really interesting to see. And it was just a lot of hard work went into it. The guys did really well. I give all my credit to the team. They worked really hard on that. So there was a benefit of both as well. I had a great team to work with. They delivered really well. They worked really hard, and they were all really integrated together. But at the end of it as well, we got to see the real life product on something you would recognise on the street as well.
That's so amazing. Like companies like Jaguar are coming to companies in Scotland to put together these gearboxes. That's fantastic. Yeah. So kind of a more light question here. Do you have to work weekends? I'm going to ask Mark that.
Do we have to? No. I can see Katie already laughing at this. Like we work hard. Like we work very hard. But is there somebody cracking the whip? Do we want to work the weekends? No. But quite often the time you maybe end up chipping in and doing a bit extra and these kind of things. It's all to do with enthusiasm. Like we are all really enthusiastic about our jobs. We really like what we're doing, and ultimately, as Katia mentioned, it's the range of what we can do. We can help companies like Rolls-Royce, like Jaguar. We can help the big companies, but it ranges right down to Katia's team and the SME team, where some of the solutions we might be doing might turn that company into the next Facebook, might turn that company into the next Rolls-Royce, etc. So we're all just really enthusiastic about what we do. So we do kind of work in. We will maybe not weekends, but you might find us working past 5 o'clock a wee bit, etc. That kind of thing.
That's really good to hear that you're also like enthusiastic, but you've still got that chance to catch a wee bit of breathing space.
Yes.
So I'm going to pass the next question back over to Katia. And the question is, what subjects? Oh, sorry, Ekaterina. Sorry, got your name wrong. What subjects / skills would you recommend I develop before I leave school?
Well, I suppose I'm here to argue for the STEM subjects, and I can only speak from my own personal experience. Of course, I absolutely cherish the foundation that I received studying physics, for example, and I mean I can't recommend enough. Physics, chemistry, maths, any possible kind of like computing and IT subjects, just try to build a strong foundation, and to me it seems that really is those subjects can be an excellent foundation for almost any career actually, and if you complement your STEM training also maybe with some other complementary subject like good knowledge of English, economics and so on. These are the foundations of a successful career broadly in sort of engineering and science and in aviation. So yes, but of course I will kind of praise the subject that I've studied, but they're hugely enjoyable, and they teach you some skills, your kind of thinking skills develop, logical thinking, ability to present information consistently as well, ability to absorb a lot of information. So these subjects develop you in many different ways, not only in a sort of like a formal subject required for a degree and so on. So that would be my view. Of course, I'm 100% sort of a STEM person.
Yeah, I totally agree with you on the STEM front there. I remember studying physics in high school, and it was probably one of my favorite subjects. And it's really important to remember that these days, like a lot of the STEM subjects are actually interconnected in the field. Like you've got biological physics kind of rising to the top. There's so many interesting new like niche fields coming out there where you don't actually need to choose between biology and physics. You could do pretty much all of them. So the next question, I'm going to bounce back to Mark. Are there any parts of the job that you don't enjoy? And I'm gonna say it's maybe something to do with paperwork from your earlier answer.
A little bit. I must admit, I much prefer a lot of the kind of being in the workshop, a little bit like the kind of hands-on running trials, and I don't mind like the kind of sitting down doing all the data analysis that goes with that. The paperwork, working comes with the nature. It comes with the nature of the job, having to do paperwork, etc. But you kind of accept it. Like I do enjoy my job. I love what we do. Are there any bad bits? Not massively. It's nothing that I wouldn't say anything that's I wouldn't say anything that is permanent issues, like as in like this is the one bit I hate about my job consistently. It varies so much because on days where things are going well and you maybe get some kind of delivery in last minute, it's the thrill. There's a thrill, there's an adrenaline. Right, we got that in. It's complete. On the days where it maybe doesn't go so well and you were maybe a bit late with something, that turns into pressure. But that's not consistent. It varies back and forth. So with the highs come the lows, with the lows come the highs as well. Like that's the bit that can vary. So on some days there are bits of your job you maybe don't like. On other days you absolutely love them because they're going better than expected. These kind of things.
That's really good to hear that. Yeah, you still enjoy your job, but there's still highs and lows, and I think that kind of really highlights the highs of the job, to be honest. So I'm going to ask this last question to Mark again, and it's probably the question that we're all here for. Are there apprenticeships available at the company? How would I find out about these?
Yeah, there's various ways to work with the centre across the board. In terms of apprentices and stuff like that, all our job listings are normally listed on the university website. So if you go although we're a university, we will run apprenticeships and different engagements, but you can go into the University of Strathclyde, which is www.strath.ac.uk, and at the very bottom of the page there's a little vacancies tab, so you can find a lot of information about jobs and opportunities there. Equally, get in touch with the centre, just phone folk up, drop us an email. We have general kind of on the AFRC website and the NMIS website, we have contact details where we can just get in contact. But we do regularly hire apprentices through our workshops, through our admin teams, these kind of things. And the great thing about them is we encourage those apprentices to develop their careers as much as we encourage all of our academics, etc. It's really, really good, and I can think off the top of my head a couple of our staff that have come in as apprentices are now delivering academic projects. They've put themselves or worked with the department to put themselves through college courses, university courses, real opportunities for growth within their career development.
That's amazing. I really like to hear of the success stories of various apprentices and all these different industries, but especially manufacturing, because it's just such an interesting field to be in. Unfortunately, we're out of time today, so I'd just like to thank both of our experts today. So thank you, Ekaterina and Mark, for giving us such an insight into what you do. I'd also like to thank all of you for joining us today and watching and keeping up with the chat. I hope you found the session useful and that you've learned more about the manufacturing sector. You can find out more about these careers at www.myworldofwork.co.uk. If you want to learn more about any of Scotland's sectors or how to get into these areas of work, you should really check out www.apprenticeships.scot. That's where you'll find out all this information about different apprenticeships, as well as the various websites that Mark pointed you in. That's probably one of the best ways that you can find an apprenticeship. If you've got any questions about today's careers, get in touch with your Skilled Careers Advisor. They'll have so much information available to you and guidance for you to remember, and you can get in touch with us as well, because we do like to hear feedback from you guys about the sessions that we're hosting. Again, this session has been recorded, so you can view it as many times as you want at a later date and have a look at the list of future sessions that are available, and I hope you can join us for some of them as well.